Stop, Stephen. No need, but thanks. I appreciate it. You talking about what? Not your thing. Move aside. He's coming. Prince Harry assumed his Stephen Colbert interview would be a humorous one, but it turned out to be much more. Stephen Colbert entered the late show stage with his signature confident smile, and the audience applauded. Colbert posed playfully in his dark suit and glasses. He raised an eyebrow and began his speech. After joking about politics and Wall Street, he switched to lighter news. Prince Harry was expected to appear, so anticipation was high. Harry had appeared on The Late Show before. Last time, he laughed with Colbert while drinking tequila discussing his memoir Spare. Audiences enjoyed it. Harry appeared more calm than normal for a royal. But tonight felt different from when he entered the place. As usual, Colbert greeted guests backstage. Harry was surprised by his mood. He was nice yet tense. The team hovered more than usual. It was immediately noticed by veteran host Colbert. After the cameras rolled, he expected things to relax. Prince Harry left to applause in a gray blazer and open-collared shirt. He waved to the audience and shook Colbert's hand with a smile. Even after sitting down and greeting, something felt odd. Harry was using less eye contact. His answers shortened. His dry humor was gone. Colbert lit. The Harry-inspired Invictus Games was formed years earlier to benefit injured veterans. The program inspired him, he said. Harry nodded in gratitude. Well, that went well. Things changed when Colbert discussed public image and privacy. Colbert noted your frequent mention of family seclusion. You've also made documentaries, written a memoir, presently working on another streaming project. How do you combine wanting to retreat with staying in the spotlight? Fair question. Colbert wasn't hostile. To relieve tension, he asked with genuine inquiry and a hint of humor. Harry stiffened. Harry said there's difference. Sharing our perspective does not invite intervention. We've been targeted for years without defense. Yes, Colbert nodded. Some claim you left one royal stage to enter another. Here you are again, right? Harry didn't laugh despite the audience's chuckle and claps. Harry quietly stated, I'm not performing. I'm here to be understood. Colbert tilted his head slightly. Of course, but don't you think the public feels confused by that? They see you leaving the monarchy for peace. But then they see this media presence growing. Isn't that kind of the opposite? It was meant to spark an honest dialogue, not create a clash. But Harry looked annoyed now. His fingers tapped the armrest. There was a pause. Let's be clear, Harry said. Leaving the royal family was never about vanishing. It was about freedom, the freedom to choose when and how to speak instead of being used. Colbert nodded again, slower this time, trying to steer things to safer ground. That makes sense. I imagine it's complicated, especially with family involved. But that word family seemed to strike something. It's more than complicated, Harry said, his voice a little sharper now. It's personal. And frankly, sometimes people treat it like it's entertainment. The room had grown quieter. Colbert, always reading the mood, tried to shift things. Okay, maybe let's pivot for a second, he said with a slight smile. I heard you're planning another trip to Africa. You've said before it's like a second home. Harry nodded. Yes. It's a place where I've always felt peace. Colbert leaned in slightly. You went soon after your mother died? You stated it helped you cope. Are you still feeling that way? Harry answered honestly this time. Conservation efforts, his emotional connection to the area, and his mother's recollections were discussed. A few minutes of calm ensued. People listened intently. However, Colbert added one last comment to get back into the show's groove. Hearing that is fantastic. I suppose Africa still benefits you more than the UK. Audiences laughed nervously. A usual Colbert hit. It was swift, smart, and on point. But Harry didn't laugh. His seat shifted, and he stared at Colbert. I don't need to compare, Harry insists. I'm not criticizing anyone. It was quiet now. Knowing the joke hadn't worked, Colbert laughed and drank water to calm the situation. Harry had already unbuttoned his blazer. I believe we're done, he said. Colbert's eyes widened. Are you leaving? Harry rose. Cameras kept rolling. Crew wasn't sure what to do. Some assumed that was part of the bit. Harry left the stage via the curtain without returning. The audience mumbled. Colbert smiled awkwardly at the camera. So that happened, he said. But backstage, it was not humorous. Tension was high backstage. The crew was silent. Some gazed at each other, unsure whether to follow Prince Harry or stay put. As Harry passed, a headset-wearing producer stepped aside. His mouth clenched, his steps hard. His squad followed him, heads down, trying not to make things worse. Sat down hard in his dressing room and pulled out his phone without speaking. His attendant softly closed the door, giving him room. He wasn't shouting, not breaking anything. Anyone who knew him knew he was disappointed. Harry didn't only dislike the interview. It reminded him of what he'd avoided for years. Headlines, opinion, and out-of-context situations. He accepted the Colbert interview after their first one went well. That night had been enjoyable and healing. Tonight seemed like a setup, at least to him. Stephen Colbert had moved on stage. The show must go on, and Colbert was used to difficult moments. His joke about not expecting a royal exit in real time had the crowd chuckle, and he introduced the next visitor, a singer. Despite smiling throughout the episode, his thoughts kept going back to what transpired. When the show ended, Colbert headed backstage. He rarely chased guests, but this was different. To clear the air. He also sought comprehension. Knocked on the dressing room door and waited. An inner voice said, "Hold on." An aide stood at Harry's door. "Can I speak to him?" Colbert asks. The aide hesitated but left. Harry stood with arms crossed at the window. Not turning. "Stephen," he said softly. "If damage control, don't bother." "I'm not here for that," Colbert said quietly. "I wanted to talk." "All done." Harry turned slowly. He seemed neutral, not angry, but guarded. "I didn't expect you to go there," he remarked. "Expected more." Colbert inhaled. "Look, I inquired what someone could wish to know. I do that. I wasn't trying to corner you." Harry raised an eyebrow. "You think I haven't heard that before?" Colbert leaned against the wall. "You're right. You've been through a lot of interviews and a lot of them were unfair. But you've also chosen to be open. When someone does that, the questions get more direct. That doesn't mean it's an attack." There was a pause. Harry sat down again. "You made it seem like I left one circus just to join another. That wasn't fair." "That wasn't my intention," Colbert said. "But I get why it felt that way." Outside the room, one of the senior producers was already on the phone with CBS Public Relations. Social media was lighting up. Clips were being posted. Fans of both men were debating what had happened. Some defended Harry, saying he had every right to walk off. Others said Colbert had only asked questions anyone else would have asked. But inside the room, things had softened just a little. Harry spoke again, this time quieter. "When I do these shows, I walk a tightrope. If I say too little, I'm hiding something. If I say too much, I'm attention-seeking. It's always one or the other." Colbert nodded. "Believe it or not, I get that. I've had to walk that line too, in my own way. People expect me to be funny, sharp, but not too much. I once made a joke about the president and got phone calls all night." Harry gave a smile. "You ever get chased by a fleet of cameras through a Paris tunnel?" "No," Colbert said. "And I never pretend I know what that's like." The room was still now. The frustration hadn't vanished, but the tension was cooling. "I didn't mean to walk off," Harry finally said, "but I did. And now the headlines will run wild." "They were going to anyway," Colbert shrugged. Harry looked at him, and for the first time that night, there was a flicker of agreement between them. Back in the hallway, the aides and producers waited. Word had gotten out that something was being worked out, but no one knew what would come next. But then the door opened again and both men stepped out. They didn't smile for the hallway cameras. They didn't pose. They just walked down the corridor toward a small conference room. Colbert turned to one of his producers and said, "Give us 5 minutes, no mics." The door closed behind them again. This time it was two men both under pressure in different ways, trying to find a way to talk without the weight of an audience. And somewhere in that room, a decision was being made. The door to the conference room clicked shut, blocking out the noise from the hallway. Both men leaned back slightly, arms crossed, but their posture had shifted from confrontation to reflection. Neither man was the type to fall into dramatic apologies when they felt they hadn't truly crossed a line. But there was a need to clear the air, to understand what had gone wrong, and how it had spiraled so quickly. Stephen was the first to speak. "You know, when you came on my show the first time, the response was huge. People loved seeing you joke around, dropping tequila shots, showing that you weren't stiff like they expected." Harry smiled faintly. "Yeah, that was fun. I thought you wanted to keep that going," Stephen continued. "And maybe I leaned too hard into the relatable royal thing." Harry looked him in the eye. "I like being relatable. It gets personal when it sounds like I'm being mocked for opening up." Stephen nodded slowly. "You were mocked." Harry paused and replied, "Not directly. The way my family queries were worded didn't feel curious. They were difficult. A little hurtful." Stephen prided himself on balancing comedy and honesty. He interviewed leaders of state, actors, authors, and campaigners, always keeping things smart yet crisp. Harry was right, questions carried weight depending on who asked and how. "You believe I overreached?" Stephen asks. Harry shrugged. "I've had worse, but it felt like you stopped seeing me and started seeing headlines." They contemplated that. Steve leaned forward. "Okay, what now?" Sighing, Harry stroked his hair. "If we say nothing, they'll say I stormed out because I couldn't take a joke. Explaining will make them say I'm playing victim again." Stephen added, "And if I say nothing, they'll say I ambushed you and chased you off my show." It was a no-win situation both men had dealt with for years, one through satire, the other through survival. Then Harry said something unexpected. Maybe we address it together, not a press release, something real. Stephen looked at him. Like a follow-up segment? Harry replied, just something honest. You and me. Short. No performance. Like a raw clip? Behind the scenes? Maybe, Harry said. Maybe simply you informing the audience what occurred. No need for drama. Stephen grinned. The drama is already there. I see your point. They shook hands. Neither celebrities nor hosts and guests, but like two men who have a rough agreement. It was flawed. It was bruised from the night, but not broken. Word circulated that anything might be recovered from the night as they departed the room. Some crew members who saw the previous walk-off saw a different picture. Prince and comedian conversing side by side. Back in the edit room, producers rushed. They had video they couldn't utilize. The walk-off was filmed, but not live. They debated whether to include it, chop around it, or distribute it as an exclusive clip. Colbert briefly collected the team. He stated, "We're not making a circus." Harry must approve any airings. He looked astonished, his executive producer. You sure? Possibly breaking figures. Colbert looked at her and said, "We lose the larger picture if we only focus about stats." Harry prepared to leave the building. His security was outside, and a few cameras were near the exit. That was the part of stardom he never got used to, the continual watch even in misery. He gazed at one of Colbert's staff members before leaving. Tell him I'll send a brief note he may read on air. He entered the night. The late show resumed the following night. The audience was pumped before it started. There were thousands of tweets, TikTok speculation, morning blogger think pieces, and a hasty CNN interview with a royal journalist. Expectedly, Colbert entered the stage to applause. He grinned, but his tone was more contemplative. Before tonight's show, I want to talk about last night, he said. The audience fell silent. You may have heard of a royal dispute. I struggled with Prince Harry during the taping. He retreated because he thought my questions were too much. After we chatted, I respected his choice, honesty, and willingness to join. He stopped, then said he also wanted me to share this. Stephen produced a printed statement. He let me read it, and it's short. He opened the note. I value discourse. They can grow uncomfortable. Sometimes they hurt, but I don't give up on understanding. I've always said my story is mine to tell, and last night reminded me that trust in the telling matters. Colbert folded the note and looked up. Ladies and gentlemen, the prince said it better than I could. The audience clapped not wildly, but with respect. No one knew exactly what would happen next. But this moment had already gone deeper than most celebrity interviews ever dared. The dust had started to settle by the time morning rolled around. Major outlets ran headlines like Prince Harry walks off late show set and Colbert addresses tension with royal guest. But for Harry, the real world beyond headlines was more personal. He spent the following day at home in Montecito, far from the studio lights of New York. Meghan, who had stayed behind during the trip, had already heard every version of the story from both her husband and the internet. She didn't overreact. Instead, she listened as Harry walked her through it again, not the way the public would hear it, but the version that only she could understand. Meghan asked, "Do you regret doing it?" Harry thought for a moment, then said, "No. But I think I forgot that honesty doesn't always mean comfort." He had spent years building a public voice through his interviews, his book, and countless speeches. But the moment on Stephen Colbert's show reminded him of something he'd tried hard to keep balanced. Control over the story didn't always mean control over how it was received. Meanwhile, in New York, Stephen Colbert's team had made a decision that surprised many in the business. They aired only a shortened version of the original interview, cutting around the walk-off, removing the sharper moments of tension, and replacing them with a candid follow-up clip. Just Stephen at his desk reading Harry's statement and offering his own thoughts. The team had debated it long and hard, but in the end, Stephen said something in the meeting that settled it. We're not here to prove a point. We're here to offer a space where things happen, and if they get messy, we don't have to make a meal out of it. That approach gained a lot of respect. Stephen allowed the audience see the humanity, stop, and contemplation that mattered rather than viral snippets. For once, people asked why it mattered. An unexpected event followed. Harry agreed to return briefly a week after the incident. Stephen revealed it to the audience. Someone wants to visit. Know him. Out walked Prince Harry. No loud clapping or astonished gasps this time, just astonishment and interest. Stephen grinned. Returning so soon? Harry smiled back. I heard you discussing me. The audience chuckled, but the tone changed. You and I had a moment when Stephen started. It may be uncomfortable. Harry said that's one word. The pair laughed again. Why did you return? Stephen asked. Walking away may have felt correct at the time, but sitting down feels more honest. This was its core. They didn't repeat everything. No reason to prolong it. They discuss the larger issue of why public interactions are so contentious. People don't always feel secure talking, and interviewer-guest trust is more important than ever. Harry explained, because I'm still figuring them out. Stephen nodded. And as someone who's made a career out of asking questions, I have to remember there's a difference between a hard question and a fair one. Harry added, and sometimes it's about timing. I might answer the same question next year and feel differently. Their conversation lasted only 12 minutes. But in those 12 minutes, something shifted. It wasn't just about Harry anymore. It was about how we treat public figures, what we expect from them, and how quickly we turn honest discomfort into entertainment. Afterward, as the cameras cut away and the segment wrapped, Stephen and Harry shook hands again. And the next morning, it was everywhere. But the response was different. This time, the headlines reflected. Prince Harry returns to Late Show. Shows how to finish a tough conversation. Stephen Colbert and Harry revisit their disagreement with respect and humor. The video reached millions, but more importantly, it made people stop scrolling for a moment to think and to listen. In the days that followed, Harry returned to Montecito where Meghan waited, smiling. How did it go? She asked. Harry replied, better. Not easier, but better. He knew not every show would offer that kind of space. Not every host would be willing to reflect or step back or let the guest lead. But in this case, it had worked. Because despite the tension, the walk-off, and the headlines, the real story wasn't about storming off. It was about coming back. And that was something everyone could understand. What do you think really pushed Harry to that breaking point? And do you believe more celebrities should speak up when they feel uncomfortable in interviews? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop them in the comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the following video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.